it's more around the, dancing and we were trying to say to the Patagonia, now they're trying to take Patagonia off the dance. It was on
Okay, you hear that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening. Today is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Caldwell Hearing Examiner. Welcome to all you both in attendance and those connected through the internet. And this is a review of our proceedings and procedures. I serve in both decision-making capacity and advisory capacity to the mayor and city council. There are two types of public hearings that this commission conducts. The first is a legislative hearing, whereby we formulate recommendations on certain land use requests. My recommendations are then forwarded on to the city council, who makes decisions on the legislative matters. The second type of public hearing is quasi-judicial in nature, meaning that the requests are specific to a parcel of land. I'm authorized to make decisions on requests for special use permits, variances, preliminary plat, time extensions, and planned unit developments that do not involve the subdivision of land. However, any decision I make or may make tonight is by no means final. Anyone that believes he or she has been aggrieved by my decision has the right to file an appeal to the city council. On quasi-judicial requests that involve the subdivision of land, rezones, and annexation, I am authorized to only make recommendations to the city council, who will make the final decision. The hearing procedures as required by the Idaho Code are as follows. One, staff will first present a report on the application. The applicant or the applicant's representative will then present a summary of the request. Testimony of those in support will be taken, followed by testimony from those in a neutral position, then followed by those in opposition to the proposal. I will allow the applicant or applicant's representative rebuttal. After the rebuttal testimony is given, public testimony is closed, and no new oral or written testimony will be allowed unless I elect to reopen testimony. The participants will receive testimony time as follows. The applicant will receive 10 minutes. Those in favor, 5 minutes. Each neutral, 5 minutes. Opposed, 5 minutes. And the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. I tend to be flexible on this because we have to cover a lot of important points, and I want to make sure that those points are well made. I accept oral and written testimony from those in attendance, but only if you sign the sign-up sheet to speak available at the front of the room and have been sworn in. When testifying before me, you must come to the podium, state your full name and address, and acknowledge that you've been sworn in. I ask everyone to treat all parties with fairness and respect. I will not tolerate any outbursts, clapping, whistling, booing, and jeers. I also ask those in attendance to please turn off your cell phones. I am a volunteer hearing examiner and receive a small compensation for my efforts. I am charged by law to keep a clear record of proceedings, consider factual testimony, and to stay within the city's and the state's rules and regulations. We, the city staff, thank you for your courtesy to us and to others as we move through the process. Now, I request the staff to swear in those who wish to testify.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes.
Thank you very much, Jen. Hope you folks at home would say yes to that as well. Our first order of business is action item 2-1, case number CNP-20-04 and ZON-20-05 and subdivision -20P-05. This is a request by Heartland Townhomes Property Management LLC and Trilogy Development Inc. for comprehensive plan map amendments, rezones, and approval of preliminary plat for Area Sky Park subdivision. The proposed commercial industrial development of the parcel R35305, 35.4 acres located on the southeast corner of Highway 2026 and Aviation Road, Caldwell, Idaho. The City of Caldwell 2040 Comprehensive Plan designates the property as commercial and services. A map amendment is proposed to allow for industrial zoning. The 35.4 acre subject property is currently zoned C4, interchange freeway commercial, and the applicant is proposing 12.6 acres of C3, service commercial, and 24.82 acres of M1 light industrial zone property. The proposed lot contains 6 commercial lots and 14 industrial lots. The subject property is located in the APO-1 land use limitation zone in relation to the airport. With that, I will ask staff to present the staff report. Ms. Root, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Debbie Root, Senior Planner, 621 Cleveland Boulevard, and I have been sworn. As indicated in that lengthy legal and request description on the agenda, this development is requesting a comprehensive plan amendment for a portion of the property and also a rezone. So the comprehensive plan amendment is to modify the commercial and services designation to a light industrial, or actually manufacturing and production designation, for the purpose of zoning the properties to commercial and services on the Highway 2026 boundary, and then light industrial on the south half, southern portion of the property, which is consistent with the area and the development that's occurring in this Sky Ranch and this portion of the county or of the city that is designated for our industrial and business parks. It's also consistent with a recent application for North Ranch, which is located north of Highway 2026, where they zoned the commercial, the road frontage along 2026 as commercial, and then the remainder of the property as light industrial. The application for the comprehensive plan map amendment and for the 2 rezones is in substantial compliance with the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance requirements. The applicant is also proposing to plat this development with commercial and services lots and industrial lots. We've had a number of developments develop as multifamily residential in the commercial zone, but this property lies within the APO-1 zoning land use limitation zone and cannot be developed residentially, but if it were to be able to, we request a restriction condition that no residential be allowed in the commercial lots, which because we need commercial development, we need retail, restaurants, bank services in these areas, not multifamily. With that said, we've had a number of conversations with the applicant. There's been a number of engineering memos sent, with regards to this, preliminary plat that's presented before us. The street sections that are identified on the preliminary plat currently do not meet the requirements of the city engineering department, our standards and requirements. There's also been a discussion in the recent past week regarding the accesses to Highway 2026. 2026 is ITD's jurisdiction, therefore the city really does not have any say over those access points per se, but the city would really like to see the right-in, right-out access at the quarter mile, not the eighth mile, which the applicant has chosen to do. It's been brought to my attention that the city engineer and the applicant were having a little discussion on that, and so that may come out a little more with the applicant's presentation with regards to the city working with the applicant and ITD to ensure that they actually have that right-in, right-out access at the west boundary versus where they know they have the deeded access at the eighth mile, so they can address that further. The preliminary plat has not been updated to reflect the engineering comments that were provided in August regarding the road widths and the types of road requirements that are there. With that said, the roads, changing the widths of the roads and things is going to modify the dimensions of the lots. It will not change the fact that the number of lots or, substantially change the underlying premise of the application in the plat, but it is not accurately reflecting what will be on the ground at time of development. The other thing that has occurred is that the applicant worked with our urban renewal agency and the city to relocate the A drain that is traversing through the middle of that property, and that is reflected on the plat as well. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Root. I do have a few questions. First of all, I'd like to introduce to the record a letter from Idaho Transportation Department to Ms. Jane Suggs, September 11th, 2020, and describing their approach to the ingress egress, particularly as you had mentioned about what they call the western approach to 2026. I won't read all this, but it does state that the west approach will need to be removed as a condition of ITD's permit for eastern approach. It cannot be used as construction access and must be blocked. So it does it goes on to say it, IT does find it acceptable for the eastern approach to be permitted as right-in, right-out public road. The approach warrants a right turn lane and needs to be reduced in width to match the description of the parcel of warranty deed. So this is, for the record, item exhibit PA7. And this is the focus of my question. The reason I introduced that first is the first question is what they call, could you put a plat up there and show the preliminary plat and show that what they call the west entrance that the ICD refers to here?
That'll work.
that this is being published to the website. There we go. Okay, yeah, that's a better picture. Those of you can see, in the north center portion of this, parcel, there shows what they refer to as the west, entrance, and, ITD states in the September 11th letter here that, they want that to be removed. Ms. Root, or Rob, could you address that, please, as far as, where the status is of that today, and has there been an update from ITD on that particular issue of the west entrance?
Yeah, I can try to address, the discussions with ITD. I did speak with, Justin Price yesterday regarding both access points. You can see the one in the middle, which is the one we refer to as the 8th mile, and then the one on the east side is the one we refer to as the 1/4 mile.
Okay.
The situation that we're running into is ITD has, it's taken them a while to decide how they want to approach these access points and what they want to permit. And they, at one point, were not going to allow them, and then they came back, and so their approval has changed a little bit, but where we're at now is there is an approved right out, access at the 8th mile that the developer has in hand. And then there is, if I understand, not an approved access at the 1/4 mile. And the discussions we had internally with the city and also with ITD is that the city would prefer to see the right out at the 1/4 mile, because that benefits both 40-acre parcels, and not have it at the 8th mile. But the view of the developer is understandable. If you get any approval from ITD, you want to hang on to that, because you don't know if they're going to issue an approval at a different location or not. And so, regarding these access points, staff is willing to work with the applicant, over these next couple of weeks to try to work with ITD and get something resolved on how the access is going to look out here and, moving forward, I guess. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat. If you could elaborate just a little bit, the city's preference on that would go with the original letter of September 11th to not have the 1/4 or the 8th mile, ingress egress?
From the city standpoint, we don't care if they have an 8th mile.
Okay.
Ingress egress. What we would like to see, if they're gonna have both of them, we would like to see the 1/4 mile be at least a right out and not restricted to only a right out. If they have the 8th mile as well, because ITD permits that, we don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Next question, and this would be for you, Rob. To the industrial road, and I'm having a little trouble reading this small print, but Kissinger, or the one that, the cul-de-sac. What kind of discussion do you have to resolve with the cul-de-sac as opposed to, connecting that, to the eastern boundary and or, connecting it, up the eastern boundary, and making that a throughway to 2026?
This was, as we reviewed this preliminarily, a long time ago when this first came in, we had reviewed that, and at this point, we didn't have any requirement to connect that through. A cul-de-sac in an industrial area is permissible, and we have those, a couple of those throughout the city. And so at this point, we had not placed any requirement that had to connect through up to 2026.
Okay, would you think it'd be a good, circulation policy to have that connect, say, to go to the eastern boundary and then go north, to connect, to the one that's, it showed us a 1/4 mile there, and making that a throughway from, east to west up to 2026? Is there value to that?
Yeah, there could be value to that. sometimes the more connectivity, can be a benefit to an area and help circulation. There are times where it can actually be a negative thing, and you may get vehicles traveling north on Aviation, they use it as a cut-through, so they can avoid an intersection, and so we would have to look a little bit closer at that if that was something that we were going to require.
Do we have any kind of proposal from that property on the eastern boundary, the next door property, as to, development of that, or is that just a cipher?
So the east property has been split into two separate lots. There's a north 20 acres and a south 20 acres. And the south 20 acres is owned by another entity. There's two different property owners. And they are proposing to build out that 20 acres into one large manufacturing building with parking lot all the way around that does not include any sort of access road behind, splitting these two properties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm asking these questions because I see some value in one, not having a cul-de-sac, and two, in making those internal circulation connections. It just makes more sense as a strictly a land use planning issue. And I'll ask the same question of the applicant on that. Okay, thank you, Rob. I have a few more questions here, which I have written down. There was a question about the A drain. Is that what it is? Does that present an issue as far as the roadways are concerned, or is that a doable, compatible with the roadway design?
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. The A drain, as you can see, was an existing open ditch that ran right diagonally through the site, and it has since been tiled into a pipe, and it zigzags. It comes across here and it goes down through this easement and runs across here. The A drain is a city facility owned and operated by the city of Caldwell, and there is no, if there's a roadway over the A drain or something to that effect, that's not a conflict with any of our standards. We can certainly work with the applicant if there was something proposed in that manner.
Okay, so it wouldn't preclude changes to the proposed road design, circulation design on this site. It could still be handled if that road design were to change.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, the A drain is fairly deep. I think it's from the top of pipe to the ground surface, it's probably 7 or so feet deep. So building a road over the top is not, it wouldn't be a big issue. It's something that we've done in other locations and could be certainly done.
And this question, well, I would like, Rob, your reaction and Ms. Ruth as well. Do you consider the application complete as far as the preliminary plat and complete enough to make the decision? What is your opinion on that?
My opinion is that there are some incomplete items on the preliminary plat, and some of those include, the access discussion that we were having, and then one road section that may have to adjust. I think conceptually the plat is not going to change from what we have here, and so this may be a situation where we can work with the developer and get something finalized before city council, and if we can't get to that point, then we would withhold the city council hearing potentially. That's just my opinion.
Ms. Ruth, same question.
Yes, I agree. We'd like it to be reflective of what would be taken before city council and be on the ground at the end, which both road sections as they exist today would have to change, which is gonna affect all of the, property sizes, the actual lot sizes. But again, as stated earlier, it's not going to change the plat for change itself. You know, they aren't gonna add lots, they aren't gonna lose lots, they're just gonna be a little bit different size in the scheme of things.
Okay, and just read another question along the same lines. What is the standard, or specific regulation about, the complete application, and what are our guidelines on that about, considering this a complete or an incomplete application?
So I don't know, specifically for the requirements. I do believe that the city is expecting, applicants to submit plats that are, what they intend to put on the ground at the end, and when there are, requests by staff or engineering, you know, this was originally supposed to go to hearing in August of 2020, and that engineering memo that called out the two road widths not being correct was in their hands at that time, and the plat was not updated to reflect that. Had been working with ITD regarding the accesses, which is why that had not been completed. But, you know, so there's things that we would have preferred that the applicant have fixed already and completed. We have other plats, you know, they're conditioned to, meet those requirements, and that this plat in particular is conditioned that it will not go to city council until staff is satisfied that the requirements are met with regards to the street widths, the lot layouts, dimensions and things, and that the, Highway 2026 accesses are resolved. And so, to me, it's incomplete, but can be completed between this time and prior to us taking it to city council, which is also conditioned in there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rob. With that, I will ask Ms. Suggs to come forward and make the presentation, please. State your name and address. Make it sworn.
Thank you, hearing examiner and staff, and of course the guests that are here and online. My name is Jane Suggs with Jim State Planning, 9839 Cable Car Street, and I have been sworn.
Thank you.
I'm here representing Arrow Step Park. I think it's gotten quite a good overview about what we're planning to do with the property. I might ask you to put up the landscape plan again, because it's easier to see. We are this property, of course, has already been annexed into the city. We are requesting the rezone to C3, and that's up against Highway 2026, and also to M1 for the industrial lands. As mentioned before, the zones are very similar to Sky Ranch, which is to the south. The property to the east of us on the south is McCain Foods USA, and that is a manufacturing facility. And from what we understand, in getting to the decision about a cul-de-sac, we would rather not have that go through, because that will be a fenced-off manufacturing facility. So they would not be using that location that we understand for any kind of access. So we would like to keep it, the cul-de-sac as shown, because a manufacturing facility typically has a large fencing all around it. We are very similar to the request in our zoning request for, like the North Ranch that was by BVA, it's across the street. We actually have one lot on our plat that runs all along the highway frontage of 2026, and it's shown as for potential highway right-of-way if needed. The property is ready for development. It was overlooked in the past because of that A drain, but now that that has been piped in, it is ready for development. In fact, the Caldwell Urban Renewal actually paid $150,000 to actually get that piped in. So it is something that, the economic development folks here in town really want to see this property developed. We did have that delay in our hearing. ITD did not recognize the two deeded accesses. I have a copy of that, if you want to add that to the record, the deed. I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay, but I'm gonna read a piece of it that says, let's see, witness the grantor's or value received does have that stuff about rights of ways and access between the right-of-way of Highway 2026 and the remaining contiguous real property belonging to the grantors, except for one point of access in width for commercial use, centered on the center line at station 144 plus 11, and limited to right in, right out. That's the 8 mile location. And one joint use point of access 40 feet wide for commercial use centered on the center line of 150, that's the quarter mile on the east side. Said center line being coincident with the mileposts. So I will make sure you get this.
Thanks, Jay.
So you can imagine our concern whenever we found out from ITD that they were closing those accesses that are actually paved and in, with the improvements. So, we presented ITD with that letter and they didn't know what to do, so it took them a while. And, both Rob and, Deb are right that it took a while for them to relay that information to the engineers here to say that both of those could remain open. Now, the west access, again, is, one we're calling the west at the 8 mile, and that's deeded as right in, right out. That is why we want to keep that, because it's deeded, and as Rob said, when you get something from ITD, you keep it. I don't think that we would be against still talking about it. The problem is we don't want to have to deal with these access issues and what kind of right-of-way that might be needed before we go to the city council. Those are ITD requirements. We would be very happy to take a condition of approval that says we will work with the city and ITD to do whatever ITD wants us to do along the Highway 2026 frontage. But to continue to delay, we haven't even received, if they want some sort of, if there's a right-in, right-out at the 8th mile and they want a decel lane, they might need some more right-of-way. But they haven't proposed that to us, so we could be years before they decide to do that. So we would like, we've got right-of-way there for that, because we knew that there might be some, I think all the owners along 2026 are doing that, making sure that there's plenty of buffer, plenty of right-of-way set aside in case they need more. So we do agree with most of the conditions in the staff report. That one first condition, I think, 20.1, it says that the applicant shall modify the preliminary plat to reflect the City of Caldwell road standards for the public industrial roads within the development in accordance with PA 5 or as amended. And this needs to be done prior to going to the city council. And let me tell you what happened. We missed it. We have our north road going at a 60-foot right-of-way with 46-foot street. The southern one is an 80-foot right-of-way with 49-foot street in it, and both of them need to be 70 feet of right-of-way. So we're talking about a 5-foot difference. We're gonna add 5 feet to the first street, or 5 feet on either side for the right-of-way. We're gonna take away 5 feet on the other side. So the plat, to our eye here, will not change. I mean, I don't think you can really see the lot changes. It will change some of the dimensions, and slightly change the square footages, but it really won't change much. So that's why we think that we just missed that. We made some changes. We were asked to put in those landscaping areas of 100 feet that go into on the streets. We added that. I think we also missed, and it came up in one of the letters from Idaho Power that we had not even seen, but there is some sort of easement along the south boundary for access to the substation on the south side. So we'll add that easement too. In most jurisdictions, those are conditions of approval. They're just added as conditions. But we would be happy to make those changes, and we'll make them immediately. But going back to that section 20.1, which is a condition of approval, there is a statement that says, and this is the problem section, in that condition, the preliminary plat shall also reflect the modifications, including right-of-way dedication and turn lanes, along with notes indicating access restrictions as required on the highway. Well, We disagree with that, because that means we're held hostage until until ITD decides what they want to do with decel lanes or auxiliary lanes, as you see in the email that I gave to Rob. So what we would like to do is strike that and just include a condition of approval that basically says we'll work together, but we can move forward, because it's really not gonna change our plat, it just changes where where the decel lanes are up in the right of way. And that really isn't the purview of the city of Caldwell. I kind of went back and looked at the BVA project that's across the street. I looked at their, engineering memo so that I could see what they were required to do. They have language that says, let's see. State Highway 2026 is a state highway controlled by ITD. Right-hand turn lanes may be required for both access points. This would necessitate additional right-of-way to accommodate these turn lanes. I have another discussion in the engineering memo that says, the highway is built, however, the westbound right turn lanes may be required for one or both accesses. Additional improvements may be required of the applicant at the time of construction. And in traffic mitigation, it goes on to say, the applicant has to comply with any additional requirements of ITD, since they have the final authority to impose them. But nowhere does it say, we're not gonna take your plat to city council because these things might happen, because this engineering memo recognized that ITD may be asking for things in the future, and they would be in the right of way. So we're just hoping that you might consider us the same as the BVA. I think you heard that, as well. They did not have to show potential right-of-way takings, they didn't have to show turn lanes, they didn't have to show notes on their plat about restrictions. So we're just asking that we can move forward without that. It doesn't mean we're not gonna work with the city and ITD, of course. There's one more clarification, and I think we just resolved this one a while ago. There's a condition 2012 that says that we will, of course, comply with the city engineer's memo. We wanted to add a sentence to that that says that we'll work with the city to determine the appropriate collection of mitigation fees. And I believe that's something that will actually work out through the development agreement. And I might let Rob talk about that, because that's something we are looking at ways to collect mitigation fees from each of the builders that are in the 20 lots. So I can answer some other questions if you'd like. Again, we aren't being blocked from having those accesses. We can have them. We're keeping the one on the 8th as a right-in, right-out, because that's what the deed says. Again, not adverse to talking more about that, but not wanting to hold up, because that's, whether it's right-in, right-out, or just right-out, it doesn't change the plat. Both of those need to be 40 feet, because that's how they were described in the deed. The A drain doesn't interfere with this work that we've done now. We would prefer not to extend the street. Again, for cut-through traffic, as Rob mentioned that also, but because we don't think that people beside us are gonna be using that as access, they're gonna be fenced. I think the application is complete with a few changes that we certainly can make before we go to city council. And, can answer any questions. I very respectfully request that you, recommend that you approve our comprehensive plan amendment, our zoning request, and our preliminary plat, with the condition that we would make those changes before we go to city council. And again, fairly minor changes.
And that concludes your testimony?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, James. The, exhibit you just handed me, I just wanted to, I haven't had a chance to read this, of course, but, just to clarify, is this talking about allowing both the 1/8 mile and 1/4 mile ingress egress points?
Yes.
And this is the corrective warranty deed that, establishes those two, points of ingress egress?
Yes, it does. And interestingly, in the ITD memo that was sent to the city and sent to us to describe, that it had copies of that warranty deed, those deeded accesses in that document. So even though they said they wanted them closed, that was, a portion of that was in that document.
And then, the subs is just, do you have, an updated letter, that supersedes the September 11th letter, in that regard from ITD?
I don't have an updated letter. I have an email that I received from Justin Price where he gave me options about which one of these we wanted to be right in, right out, and we chose the one that was deeded. So I have an email that has that information. I'm giving it to staff, I might have to, I don't know if I have a second copy, but I can. It's just an email that I had last week, I think, where he said, I'm sorry it took so long to get back with you, but which ones do you want right in, right out?
Yeah, that's, well, you know, it'd be nice to have that as part of the public record. And that's also part of the decision, process. The, question I had for staff, which I'll put to you, and you address it to some, the question I had with staff as far as, making a connection of the cul-de-sac to the eastern boundary and extending that, north to 2026, have you considered that, or what is your thoughts on, making that internal connection?
We would rather not make that connection and would actually, try to not have that connection. Again, we're talking about industrial property, typically fenced. It's not a through street necessarily. Again, like I said, I don't think, and that access, on the east boundary doesn't keep going south. It stops because of a pond, right? There is a, drainage pond that's right at the bottom of our property. Can you pull up a drawing that shows that location? Again, you can see the southern, on the east side of that little map, you can see the McCain properties, and we don't plan to connect to them. They're another manufacturing, and so these are industrial uses that will be fenced off, and we think the cul-de-sac is the appropriate location for that. Not having people drive through this industrial area unless you mean to be there.
And as far as that cul-de-sac is concerned, they're concerned about, having a cul-de-sac, large enough to turn a big semi-rig, an 80-footer around in there.
We will make that happen, because it will be an industrial side street.
Okay, is that the way it's portrayed on the plat now?
That street is portrayed with an 80-foot right-of-way right now, so I don't know the right radius of it. I'm gonna have to do some research on that on the plat to find out the radius, but, we'd be happy to make, that will be a connection. We, won't be able to sell these properties to industrial users if we don't have appropriate turnaround for them. So it is important, just as it is to you, to make sure we meet that standard for industrial street and an industrial street turnaround cul-de-sac. It's just important to us too, because we're trying to sell lots to people who want to make sure they can do that. So I don't have any problem with you adding a condition just to make sure that that turnaround meets industrial traffic standards.
Okay, but do we know what those standards are?
I'll have to defer to the engineer, the city's engineer.
Mr. Hand Examiner, we do not have an industrial cul-de-sac standard, but we could certainly work with the applicant and determine, what would be appropriate. Our typical cul-de-sac is a 50-foot radius, which is the same that we have at the end of Challenger, and that's typically what the fire department requires.
I still think there are some issues, you know, that, well, we've discussed them, but, and you brought up a few yourself where you're requesting conditions of approval. That is typically part of the application process. You know, it is something that should have some consideration here, a little bit of time to cogitate and, look at that. I know these are minor issues, and all of them can be, completed before this is, heard before the city council, but I think there are a number of issues, we get an accumulation of issues here, that it's, aiming towards it, this not being a complete application, and one that, city council would, they want to have the whole story. And, you presented, this evidence tonight, and that is helpful. I'm not sure if we're there yet. Where would you see the timing if these were conditions, to complete these kind of items on your preliminary plat?
I would say that the condition on the two industrial streets, we can make, if not before the week is out, by next week. Those would certainly be made. The condition that I have a trouble with is the condition that the engineers have written that says we have to resolve all the ITD issues and put those on the preliminary plat in the ITD right-of-way. I will not be able to do that next week because we haven't even received a proposal for an updated letter from Justin Price. So I can't do that, but it doesn't change the plat. So what I'm trying to do is understand how BVA might have to do turn lanes and restrictions, but it didn't hold up their plat. We're being asked to wait until ITD comes up with some idea about what they want in their right-of-way, and we don't, that's part of your condition here, and I'm trying to get that out of our condition so that we don't hold up our plat. We're just looking for the same consideration there. As if we agree that the development agreement can deal with the mitigation, that was just a clarification that I had with Rob a while ago when we were here, because we had emailed back and forth but had not received an understanding about exactly how that was going to be happening. But if it's part of the development agreement, which we have to do, that's fine too. We don't have to add a condition. But next week I'll get you a preliminary plat that's changed with the right of ways, and it really won't change anything. Again, the only condition I can say that is a problem is asking me to put all the information about ITD on my plat. And we think that those are things that we just take that out and include a condition. Instead of trying to put it all on a plat, we just say the applicant has to work with ITD and the city to make sure that any kind of right-of-way or anything, that we'll do it. We have to do what ITD says. So I don't understand, this is really not an incomplete application. Yes, we have two streets that we missed by 10 feet on the rights of ways, but the streets, they're basically gonna be the same. The plat's gonna lay out the same.
So, Steve, just my application, the ITD, the 8 mile, quarter mile ingress egress, they're both going to be right in, right out in your proposal?
No.
It's,
The 8 mile will be right in, right out. The quarter mile will be right out.
okay.
That was what we were offered by ITD. Can I get that? Okay, you did? Okay.
Is that, is that, the status of the plat in hand now?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't, yes, that's the status, because all we have is an easement there. I mean, it doesn't show, the plat right now is not construction drawing, so it's not gonna show turn lanes, just like we don't show lanes necessarily on all of our streets. It's not gonna show, but it will be a condition of it will be something that ITD requires us to do. It's not gonna change the way the plat looks.
All right, thank you. So we have, no more testimony, and, let's see, I'd like to have a conversation with the staff, and then you'll have a chance to reply.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, as far as our discussion with the applicant on this, in regards to the ingress egress, the plat in hand, the preliminary plat in hand, reflects those conditions, the right in, right out, for the 8 mile and the right out only. Are we all on the same page on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. I think that we are on the same page. I understand the applicant's predicament in that waiting for ITD to give final resolution on something could take some time, especially if they're looking to acquire additional right-of-way along the entire frontage potentially. The access doesn't change significantly the layout of the plat, except that depending on how the access is, their easement that they have at the 8th mile, would have to be converted into a roadway if they're gonna have a right-in, right-out at that location. And that's something that I think we can work through. I'm comfortable, revising that requirement or that condition that, as long as they, comply with ITD's requirements, and the city will also work with ITD to make sure, that we're trying to get, the best scenario for access at that location, as long as the applicant's willing to do that, which, they don't have much of a choice, honestly. Then I think that condition is fine.
Okay, and, Ms. Suggs also addressed, condition 2012 and requested a statement about, collecting mitigation fees, page 15, 2012. Is that consistent with your, condition or approval?
Yes, so the mitigation, just to be very clear, the mitigation is not a fee, it is traffic mitigation to improve or enhance traffic impacts that this site may have on the nearby road system or the adjacent road system. The mitigation is different from an impact fee, it is not an impact fee. And so, just for clarification, the mitigation is typically, we've talked to the attorneys about this, and they have requested that mitigation is due as each lot develops. And we have reviewed that with the attorneys, and there's no problem with that. And so the request that Ms. Suggs is making in the application to have mitigation as part of each building permit is not an issue.
And, all right, would you help me with, a wording to that effect, to add to 20.12?
Yes. You could state that the engineering department has reviewed the mitigation request, the traffic mitigation request by the applicant, and also reviewed with the city attorney, and agrees that the proposal by the applicant to apply mitigation in conjunction with building permits on individual lots is acceptable for this development.
Thank you. We'll take that from the minutes.
Okay.
Okay. And one other item here. Debbie, the statement you made about another adding a condition, perhaps 2016, for no residential uses allowed. Is that contained elsewhere, or should we look at that kind of condition?
It is not contained elsewhere. I believe we should add it. The APO land use limitation zone will restrict it, but if it's a condition of approval, it's very clear on a plat to anyone purchasing any of the lots or anything that's not a consideration for this commercial property.
Okay. Thank you, Debbie. I just want to review my notes here, make sure that we cover the bases. All right, with that, Ms. Suggs, would you like to rebuttal to that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Eggleston, Jane Suggs, representing the Aaron Scott Development. I think it sounds like that we're kind of in agreement that we've resolved the bigger issue, which is this condition about having to resolve all the ITD requirements before we can go to city council. And I think we've arranged and figured out that will not be necessary. We certainly will work together for that. And thank you to Rob for clarifying about the mitigation, not a fee, but the mitigation that's required for the traffic impacts. And yes, this is a little different because we won't be paying that just as upfront because we don't know what those traffic impacts are right now. These are empty lots that will be, we have a traffic study where we assume some different uses, but the actual uses are not known at this time. So again, I think I'll make a commitment that we'll next week have you a new preliminary plat that shows the streets as proposed at the right width. And, I think that should do it. I'll sit down with the staff and make sure that there's nothing else that they would like to see on the plat, but we will move forward, hopefully, to city council. Once they receive that, they can schedule us as they see fit for city council hearing. So I would again respectfully request your approval of our applications for comprehensive plan change, rezone, and preliminary plat, as will be revised according to the staff requirements.
Thank you, Ms. Suggs. Appreciate it. All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing and get to the decision. We take this in sequence, looking first at the comprehensive plan, proposal to amend the comprehensive plan. And, we have, the findings of facts. The Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. I would like to add that the proposal, item 5.3, the proposal supports the airport enterprise with a mix of compatible land uses and as a transportation hub for the region. The conclusions of law for the comprehensive plan amendment. The Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements are met. The hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. And the recommendation for the comprehensive plan amendment, based on the findings, facts, and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number CMP-20-04, a request to amend the 2040 comprehensive plan map from commercial and service to manufacturing production for approximately 24.82 acres of parcel 35307 is approved with the following conditions of approval. And those include 8.2 and 8.3 is found on page 13 of the staff report. The next item, the rezone, and we have the findings of facts for the proposed rezone. The Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. And to that, the finding fact, the rezone proposal is more compatible with the surrounding land uses and provides more industrial capacity to support the airport enterprise. The conclusions of law for the rezone, the Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend it to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements are met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. The recommendations for the rezone based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law, The Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council that case number ZON-2005, a request to rezone parcel R35305, a 35.4 acre parcel from C4 to 12.16 acres of C3 service commercial and 24.82 acres of M1 light industrial in accordance with the exhibits A6 attached hereto and is approved. And moving on, for the preliminary plat, the findings of facts, the preliminary plat, the Caldwell Planning and Zoning Commission or the hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. I'd like to add a finding that there are outstanding issues of detail having to do with the points discussed in this hearing, and they have been resolved and will be amended to the preliminary plat application before it goes to hearing with the city council. The conclusions of law, the Caldwell Planning and Zoning, the Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommending to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met. The hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of the Idaho Code and city ordinances. In the recommendation for preliminary plat, based upon the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number SUB-20P-05, a request for preliminary plat approval of the Arrow Sky Park subdivision consisting of 6 service commercial lots and 14 light industrial lots on parcel R35305, a 35.44 acre parcel located in the southeast corner of Aviation Way at State Highway 2026 in Caldwell, Idaho, is approved with the following conditions of approval. And those conditions of approval are found on pages 14 and 15 of the staff report, and I shall make amendments to these conditions of approval. There will be conditions 20.01 through conditions 20.16. In condition 2012, there will be added a statement with the help of our civil engineering staff about the traffic mitigation required for this, and I'll leave the wording up to staff to work out with the legal staff, the attorneys, and we'll add item 20.16 to the effect that no residential uses will be allowed in the commercial areas to maintain compatibility with the airport APO zone overlay. And with that, I conclude this hearing, and thank you for your participation and attendance. The next item of business is item 2-2, action item, case number ANN-20-09 and PUD-20-04. A request by Riley Planning Services on behalf of Tanner Layton Triple Dot Development for annexation of 20.35 acres with the designation of R1, low density residential and planned unit development PUD with the preliminary plat for L Monterey subdivision with 118 residential units consisting of 10 multifamily lots, 72 units, 19 townhomes, 27 single-family residential lots, and 8 common lots. The 2040 comprehensive plan designates this property as low-density residential. The proposed density for development as a PUD is 5.8 units per acre. The subject properties are located at 2921 Marble Front Road in Caldwell, Idaho. Parcel numbers R35117 and R3511710. The subject property is contiguous to Van Buren Elementary School and is located southwest of Mosaic's Charter School. With that, I'll solicit testimony of staff for their staff report. Ms. Root?
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Debbie Root, Senior Planner, 621 Cleveland Boulevard, and I have been sworn. Before us today is a request to annex 20 acres into the city of Caldwell with a zoning designation of R1, low-density residential. The applicants have chosen to submit a planned unit development, which is a process available in the zoning ordinance for this property, which allows for, through the comprehensive plan, a maximum density of 6 units per acre in this low-density residential zone, as if it meets the standards that are defined in the planned unit development portion of the zoning ordinance. For this application, the applicant has presented a plan that is primarily substantially conforming to the planned unit development ordinance. There are some things that are minutely lacking, but overall the plan meets the requirements of the planned unit development. It meets the requirements of the comprehensive plan for density and the mix of housing types that are available there. I believe that the developer has provided a good plan to help mitigate some of the impacts to the existing neighborhoods that are single-family residential currently in a low-density residential zone. This property is can be considered an infill property, although it's right on the cusp of that. But what it does do is complete some street sections in this area, which provides for connectivity to the eventual city park that's in the planning right now, provides for a complete sidewalk and connectivity to Van Buren Elementary from the development. The city is in need of mixed uses of housing units, as far as, more affordable units for the workers and the residents of the city, single moms with children and different things. So it meets a growing need in the community for housing. They will be piping the A-drain along the Lincoln Road side of the property, which is a significant investment, but it's also a good planning strategy for the type of housing that they're proposing and the location of this. The layout and the development of this have provided for the required open space. The centralized use of the park and the amphitheater provides for open space for all of the residents within the development. They're providing for pathway connections. The developer has reached out to the Van Buren Elementary School to verify the potential for connecting to the pathways that exist on the school property. The school has responded in a favorable manner, but not necessarily provided in writing that the pathway connections can be made. If not, the applicant will have to make pathway connections on their property, within the development and possibly to the city park that's, planned for, east of the development and north and east of the A drain on that property. Staff is supporting this application. We did receive quite a number of letters which have been provided for the hearing examiner in the staff report, so they are part of the record at this point, with people concerned that there is no multifamily development in this area. It doesn't belong there. The property is low-density residential. It should be low-density residential. Those kind of comments, they're heard, they're respected for these people. I do believe that the applicant has made a significant effort to provide for the single-family residential to be adjacent to single-family residential and clustered the large multiplex kind of townhome structures away from that single-family residential. The traffic mitigation, the concerns with there's too much traffic in this area. The city is actively working on development of these roadways, and in this area, there's a lot of development occurring in this area and much more to come. So, the applicant did complete a traffic impact study. They will have to pay their mitigation fees to make improvements to the affected roadways and intersections. And so anyway, staff is in support of this application, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Root. I do have a lot of questions on this. Well, first of all, let me just introduce a letter that you gave me tonight. It's actually an email from Melissa Lanigan, principal of Van Buren Elementary, to Tanner, I guess the applicant, and it states, hi Tanner, thank you for stopping to Van Buren last week. It was so nice to meet you. It was exciting to learn about your plans for the property next door to us. I look forward to working in partnership with you. All the best, Melissa. Ms. Langer, principal. This will be exhibit 2.1. It's significant just in as much as is correspondence from the school district, which is an affected party. So the questions I had, my primary job tonight on this is to make sure it's in conformance with the PUD ordinance. And the PUD ordinance, that's 2967, 7-21, 2014, has a requirement, the baseline requirement, that planned unit development is intended to provide flexibility, latitude, and relief for the provision of the zoning ordinance only if the proposed development is consistent with two or more of the following instances. And if you would entertain the questions, please. There are 5 potential things to which they might conform, and you've made comment on each one of these. The first being development offers a maximum choice of living environments by allowing a variety of housing and building types. That's clearly the case here with the multifamily 8-plex and 12-plex. And so we consider that as meeting one of the criteria of the 2 required. Item 2, development proposed mixed-use projects which are functionally integrated within the development and provide services in primary use. in your note, the development proposal proposes different residential uses, but no commercial and mixed-use elements, that we, might refer to the issue of, services, community services being the school and being the city park, adjacent to this property. And, so there are some services available to that, so I consider that, contributing, to the requirement for two or more of these. And, would you agree with that on item two, that it meets the criteria for item two?
Yes, I would concur with that. And I just recently, this morning had a discussion with the city engineer regarding the fact that they're actually developing the plans for the city park right now. So, that was a new, element for me this morning.
Okay. Item three, the development provides a layout which preserves and properly utilizes natural topography and geologic features, trees, scenic vistas, and other vegetation. Your staff report talks about the development is designed to work with the existing irrigation and structures, which is actually a requirement. They have to do that anyway, regardless of whether it was a PUD or not. Do you think item three has been met, is that condition of allowing the PUD to go forward?
I don't believe that this, application, really speaks to natural topography, geologic features, trees, et cetera. They have, made an effort to, make connections to the, school property, the existing, looping pathway that's on the school property. And they are covering that A-drain, which provides for some safety aspects and also, better utilization by the development of that property, as a feature. It reduces the potential for weeds and other, things that go along with having a large irrigation drainage and things. And so in that way, the significant investment of covering that drain helps to provide for better utilization, some life safety things with children, and, just being able to, put pathways or just having features on that, existing irrigation easement that wouldn't be there if it were left as an open drain.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Root. And so that's still, in my consideration, it's still a maybe, but they've met items 1 and 2. Item 4, a land parcel constrained or otherwise limited by some obstacle, feature, geometry, condition, or easement interferes with applying standard development processes. And your note in the staff report is the land parcel does not appear to be constrained or otherwise limited in any way that would interfere with sand development. So we consider that condition not met. And item 5, the development encourages infill development that contributes a compatible design to the existing neighborhood. And we had discussed this earlier. It is, according to the zoning code, has a definition of infill, section 10307.7, where it talks about one being 20 acres or less, and having substantial development around it. In this case, the development around it is the subdivision to the south, the half of subdivision to the west, the school, and the soon-to-be public park. And so it's does look like an infill there. This route, would you concur with that? Does this qualify for item 5 as an infill?
Yes, as we discussed, the definition within the zoning ordinance, it could meet an infill property, yes.
Okay, so it appears that they've met the standards, for the planned unit development, which is probably at the root of the question of, the kinds of correspondence we've had from the neighborhood, you know, as far as the appropriateness of the land use. I just wanted to get that really solid so that we're all on the same page that this indeed does, qualify to go forward as a planned unit development. When I look at the staff report, I'd just like to add a note here, page 4, item 3F, it talks about residential density, and your statement, the maximum density allowed in the R1 zone for PUD is 6 units per acre, and the proposed development is 5.99 units per gross acre, and that's 122 units divided by 20.36 acres. I'd just like to note that the density limit comes from the comprehensive plan in the low-density residential section of that plan of the maximum being 6 units per acre. And so we have required amenities as part of the PUD ordinance, and it's not 100% clear to me as far as the features that they have proposed to achieve the required amenities. If you would, please, and I'm looking at your staff report, page 5, item 4A and 4B, could you just walk us through those two sections of the required amenities and the optional amenities to demonstrate their achievement of those criteria?
Yes, so the required amenities, all planned unit developments shall have the following features: 5-foot wide asphalt paved micro pathways connecting residential areas to all non-residential areas, open space, common lots, recreational facilities, major pathways, and school bus pickup locations. 8-foot wide asphalt paved or concrete paved and porous surfaces other than gravel. Major pathways are required in all planned unit developments with a 5-foot wide landscape buffer on each side of major pathways. Major pathways meeting the standards listed above are required to provide connectivity to adjacent pathways to comply with the city's pathway master plan and to provide for connectivity to adjacent properties. In general, major pathways shall meander through the center of the PUD, be entirely located within a platted common lot that is dedicated as public access easement, and provide connectivity to all adjacent parcels of land. With the pathways, as indicated, the applicant has provided for pathways that are going to connect through the multifamily townhouse units that are clustered in the northeast corner to this, proposed to connect to the school's pathway, the walking path. If that isn't a possibility, because the school may very well reject the ability to connect there, then the city engineer, this was the discussion this morning, that pathway should connect over to the park that's being planned north and east of the A drain. And that may require, some mitigation or participation in making that connection whether the A-drain needs to be crossed with a pedestrian bridge or something along that order. I don't know what that plan is. Otherwise, the sidewalks will definitely connect it along Lincoln Road, and sidewalks will connect along the, frontage on Marble Front as well. And then they provided for, sidewalks throughout the development, which connect all of the different residential uses. They provided for a connection to the adjacent development to the west as well. And all of the common areas, the amphitheater, the park, the pathways are in a common lot on that property. So in that way, they will be meeting the, pathways requirements for that. The applicant will be required to provide for a bus stop location that they need to work with the school district and bus companies to provide that space. Additionally, they need usable open space as defined in section 100705 of this chapter, which is our landscaping ordinance, and that's 10% of the gross area, which they have also provided for. There needs to be varying berm street landscape buffers of 2-to-1 to 3-to-1 ratio, and that is provided along both Lincoln Road and the Marble Front frontage. That variable pathways, and this may be something that has to be changed in the ordinance, but the sidewalks and things must remain ADA compliant, and therefore that berm ratio may have to be leveled to meet those compliance requirements. The required optional amenities, the ASO can provide for 4 more of the following amenities for the planned unit development. They provided an amphitheater, which is other suitable amenities, and a community center, which is their mail center, hub, and package drop-off and things, and maybe the applicant can further elaborate on what that contains. They do have, some meandering sidewalks within the development. The development the units will have to be sprinkled within the multifamily portion of this development. The townhouses along the western boundary are rear entry from those, and the fronts typically are going to face each other along a green strip between there. They did provide for an internal circulation roundabout within the facility, and that's also part of that. What staff would like to see is a little bit more in the way of enhanced amenities, possibly basketball court, volleyball court, something that provides for, not just a grassy play area for the potential youth that will be in this facility, but that provide for, some interactive play area for that. And potentially some shade shelters or something along that order, just in this vast open space. But with that, I believe that the applicant has minimally met the requirements for the PUD as far as the optional amenities and for the required amenities as well.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. Yeah, again, I'm trying to certify the case that this is complying with the PUD ordinance, and I think these are the crucial questions, that people would have. It seems that they do meet that, and I appreciate your recommendation for additional, amenities, and, we'll address that. Another question here, this would be for Rob, I'm just, curious, in the right, or the street section of the staff report, page 9, item 6, talks about the common driveway, standards here, and I'd just like to certify that, for the multiple family part of the, proposal, that these, common driveway standards have been met.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. My understanding is that you're referring to the north, kind of the northeast area there where the roadways are not public roadways, they're private. And that would be consistent, as far as I can tell, so as far as I can tell, in item number 6, this meets the criteria of private. The only exception would be item A. It needs to be 26 feet wide instead of 24. And that's kind of a more recent change that the fire department has given us, that they have requested. I don't see any other concerns with the rest of these items listed under number 6.
And Rob, was that 26 one of the conditions of approval? Is that in there?
No, so what I'm saying is,
The ordinance has changed?
oh, okay. It may be a condition of approval somewhere else, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So, Mr. Hearing Examiner, just to clarify, so the internal circulation roadway within the multifamily cluster of structures on the northeast corner, that roadway must be 26 feet wide, and I've had that discussion with the applicant on that. The common driveways, the short common driveways that are not greater than 150 feet in the duplexes and triplexes on the west boundary, those can be 24 feet wide. I had a discussion with the building official regarding the setbacks, what would be required for the minimum setback from the actual common driveway width of 24 feet to the triplexes and duplexes, and so they've met that with a 5-foot minimum to the wall on those as well. And so the number 6 in the street section of the engineering memorandum does actually define, spell out what the common driveway standards are in the current ordinance for common driveways and streets. The multifamily portion of the clustered development must meet the 26-foot wide requirement for the fire district where fire hydrants are required, which they are, and so the applicant will make those changes.
Okay, I think this is a question for Debbie, in this group. We had a recent case, having to do with multiple family, access, through, you might call them, quasi-private streets. So has the fire department signed off on, this proposal as far as the ability to locate the individual units, by address and street name and fire access in general?
Yes, the Alan Perry, the fire marshal, we did cover that in a, brief meeting with regards to the 26-foot wide streets, the height of the structures, which won't exceed 30 feet, so they don't need roof access to these structures, whereby there would be road access required. They will, locate the fire hydrants based on fire flow and, access to the units at the time of looking at the construction drawings when they come in for, the appropriate location and distance separations for the fire hydrants at that point. So he was satisfied that this would meet that requirement.
And the addressing has been reviewed, and they're clear that's going to, work for the public safety?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And one last question on this, and I think you mentioned it, but, there'll be school bus stops. Has that been worked out, the location of the bus stops, or is that just a condition of approval that will be met, if it is approved?
Correct. You can ask the applicant that. I do not know that there's, defined locations yet, but it is something that's required in the comprehensive plan and, should be a condition of approval.
Thank you very much. And, with that, I would, request the applicant, come up and make their presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Penelope Constantakis, Post Office Box 405, Boise, Idaho 83701, representing Triple Dot Development. And I will get to your questions. I have been sworn in. Thank you. So, the project team and the applicant have reviewed the staff report and concur with the findings and conditions of approval. As you know, the application this evening are an annexation with a zoning designation of R1, a planning and development, a preliminary plat, a development agreement, and some variances. To prepare for the hearing, I reviewed the following documents and information. I read the staff report, I read the 2030 and the 2040 comprehensive plan, I reviewed the zoning ordinance, I reviewed Compass and Canyon Highway District traffic counts. I looked at the ITD Safety Division traffic accident data for this area. I reviewed capacity standards for collector roadways and minor arterial roadways. I looked at housing data that was available online and Compass Development Review. I also looked at recently approved and proposed residential and non-residential development in this quadrant of Caldwell, as well as the future road network that's depicted in the comprehensive plan under the Caldwell Area Impact Map. As you know, the applicant has reached out to Van Buren, the school principal, and it is my understanding that they're embracing the proposed development. We'll follow up with them as needed. Please let me know if you have any questions regarding any of these items that I've listed. I have all that data with me. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. The total unit count is 122. And I know that at the last minute when these staff reports get done, it gets a little bit crazy. So just a clarification on that. We have 27 single-family residential lots of 8,000 square feet or greater. I have 19 owner-occupied townhomes, and there are 76 row townhomes in the multifamily section of the development. With that change in the unit count, our density is 5.99, which still remains under the 6.0 threshold for density. So with regard to site context, we have two schools, one to the east, Van Buren, and then there's a charter school that's north and east of the site. We have single-family traditional residential subdivisions adjacent to the site. I would like to note that both of those subdivisions were developed with a lot size standard for R1 that was less restrictive at 6,000 square feet, as opposed to the current code, which now requires 8,000 square foot lots. There's a variety of housing types, and the variety of housing types in this area of Caldwell is almost exclusively single-family detached, and that includes the new residential developments that are coming on board. Collector Street is located along the south boundary and a minor arterial along the north boundary. According to Compass and the traffic impact study, which the city of Caldwell has accepted, both streets are operating under capacity at this time. The future land use map for the city designates the area adjacent to the site that have not been annexed into the city as future low density residential development. The project vision was to create a development that was context sensitive. So it was carefully laid out and designed to blend with the variety of land uses that surround the site. We have single family adjacent to single family, but we have larger lots by at least 2,000 square feet. We have row townhouses, and these are both intended for owner-occupant, which is along the northwest boundary of the site, and we have rental row townhouses that are adjacent to the higher classified roadway. Pathway connections to Lincoln and Van Buren are appropriately placed, provided that Van Buren accepts the pathway. They're appropriately placed near the schools so that there's walking connectivity for students. While the PUD standard does speak to incorporating commercial, the applicant and project team felt that commercial at this location would be somewhat out of place. Though I would add that the multifamily that's proposed with this development and the higher density townhomes along the western boundary will both support future neighborhood commercial development as development occurs along Lincoln. This is a unique and innovative amenity package, and I'll get into that. The amphitheater has potential for use by the greater neighborhood, not just the specific project as proposed. So we have a roundabout, we have the amphitheater. I have for submittal to you an elevation of the community building and floor plan, which includes an assembly area, restrooms for men and women, which would go nicely with the amphitheater and open space, as well as a male facility for the project. It also has a lovely veranda that wraps all the way around it, which is very nice for shade and for people to bring their chairs and watch the children play out in the grass. We have pathway connections. This is an interesting element of this project. There's a sewer line that runs through the middle of it from the already developed subdivision to along the southwest boundary, and it's just been running through a field at this point. But it will be placed in a formal easement as a result of this, which enhances the city's position in terms of maintenance and repair. The bus stop locations will work closely with the school district to make sure that they have what they need. I have an applicant who's very eager to work closely with the city to make sure that everything that they need is incorporated into the site. And we do have open space, of course, located on the site. We'd be happy to work with staff to add some additional amenities as they requested. And so with that, the site does appear to meet the standards for PUD. The drive aisle, the private lane through the multifamily portion of the site, we're aware of the fact that it needs to be increased to 26 feet. I've already consulted with the engineer and will implement that. The short driveways currently are 24 feet wide, the ones for the owner-occupied townhomes, so we've already taken care of that. So with that, I just wanted to continue with my notes here. So we didn't incorporate commercial development because we thought it would be out of place at this particular time. We utilize the non-conforming element that's provided in the zoning ordinance, but we do stay well below the 30% that is allowed. We have a 19%, element instead of 30. So we did stay short of that ceiling that exists in the code. These are gonna be aesthetically pleasing, two-story building designs with a lot of attention and care to the interiors as well. Each dwelling unit in the multifamily row townhouses has an individual entry, and they have backyards as well. In addition to the comp plan analysis in the staff report, there were other goals that I found that relate to school facilities, transportation, housing type, characteristics and opportunities, recreation, and land use goals in the comp plan that actually support the project. I noted that the Caldwell blend of owner versus renter occupancy is about 65% owner occupancy and about 35% renter. And we feel that that supports our project of incorporating rental multifamily. But again, I want to emphasize, these are not apartments, these are row townhouses, just a different kind of thing. It's more of a home. And the TIS was prepared and supports the project. Right-of-way will be dedicated for both Marble Front and Lincoln. Street improvements and road widening will be constructed. And also, I would like to note that the applicant will be contributing close to $52,000 for future transportation-related improvements at Middleton Road and Linden. And this is required by the engineering staff, but the applicant is happy to do that. So with regard to other development or department conditions, we're happy to incorporate and implement all conditions of approval as stipulated by the engineering, building, and fire departments. The applicant agrees to a pathway connection to the park. We'll work closely with staff to ensure that the landscape plan and all the required amenities meet the City of Caldwell standards and vision for their city. So with that, the applicant and project team are excited to move forward with this innovative project. And we believe that it not only creates additional variety of housing options in the neighborhood, but it enhances and complements the area, as well as facilitates a greater Caldwell vision for the future, especially in this area of Caldwell. With so many new professional and semi-professional jobs that are being created on the north side of the interstate, El Monterey is uniquely situated to enhance the number of Caldwell residents who work in Caldwell, who have Caldwell jobs. Right now, at least 50% of the people that work in Caldwell don't live in Caldwell. And if they're living in Caldwell, they're spending their money in Caldwell, and they're supporting other businesses and employees when they do that. We do respectfully request approval and recommendations of approval for the project. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. The applicant is here and the project engineering representative is here also. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I do have a couple of questions. You addressed the ownership versus rental. What is your estimation, the amount of ownership, both in the multifamily and in single-family portions of this?
I anticipate it'll be 100%. These houses are going to be, the applicant estimates they'll be between $300,000 and $500,000 homes. And these are large lots. They're 8,000 plus square foot lots. So the intent is to have the applicant has a vision of creating a development where you enter as a row townhouse tenant, and then you move to a townhouse and own it, and then you move to a single-family detached residential lot and live there. So it's from you know, graduation from high school or college and your first apartment with your first job, all the way to late career and retirement. So we've tried to encompass all of the different life stages in one development.
And how would you typify, or what is the range of, the cost of the townhouses, the purchase price?
You know, I don't have a hard number for that, but I'm gonna guess and say they'll be between $250,000 and $400,000.
Okay.
They'll be slightly less than a single-family detached dwelling, and that's just a function of the amount of lot that you have to purchase with the townhome.
And, on the multiple family, some of the letters of record in the staff report, from the neighbors, talk about the available parking, and, you know, the concern and hope that there'd be a sufficient amount of parking in multiple family area. How have you met the standards, and are you exceeding or just meeting the standards for parking?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I apologize that I didn't review that, but I do know that we've got a lot of parking in there. It meets the standards for the city as a minimum. I think we're overparked. I'm not 100% sure on that, but there is room for us to add additional parking. So if we need to add some more parking spaces, we can do that, and we'd be happy to do so. We can work with staff to make sure that we are providing ample parking.
Thank you. And then one more question, well, two more. Does the applicant intend to develop this, or will this just be, you know, selling the lots and have others develop it?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, this is another fun element of this project. The development team, husband and wife, are actually related to the people that own the parcel now, and they have a long history with Caldwell and have been farming that area for a long time. No, we have one home builder in the development team and one multifamily builder, so they're planning on building out the subdivision. They're planning on doing all the building.
And, following that, my last question has to do with well, you do have examples of design, particularly of the multiple family, part of the project, and, I'm just looking for the design guidelines that you may be working with, and, you know, how they're going to, you know, promote the high dollar value you're talking about for these type of units.
If you'll excuse me for just a minute, I actually have all the architectural elevations. I'll get them for you. Before I bring these up, I just want to address that a little bit. We have a lot of roof plane changes and wall plane changes, which creates context and reduces any issues with massing. Like I said, each unit has a porch area and a front door in the backyard. We're going to be including stone accents and a lot of different colors that will be included in the materials. There'll be balconies. Like I said, the front area, the front doors all have porches over them. The design, this was done locally by New Design, and they're fully designed at this point. So a lot of attention was put into making sure that it was attractive and aesthetically pleasing, that the color palette has been selected with the intent to be pleasing but not loud. I think we've done everything we can to make it as attractive as possible. Staff wants some changes. Again, the applicant is happy to work with staff in any way that they need it in order to make this a win for everybody.
Thank you. And I noted, these are in the staff report there, better reproductions, from that staff report, so we'll enter these as exhibits. Okay, that is very helpful. That concludes the questions I have, and, I thank you for the presentation, and we'll go to the participants here. I would like to apologize, for the time we've had to sit here patiently. You know, we had a lot of issues with the other case and this one, so the first up is, Keith Bowen. Please, would you like to speak? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead, Rob.
I just wanted to clarify one thing, that in the testimony was stated that the mitigation for the development would be going toward Middleton and Linden, and that is actually a typo. So, the mitigation will be applied, typically it's applied much closer to the development, where the impact of the traffic of the development is occurring. And so it's not gonna be applied way over on Middleton and Linden. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you, Rob. I actually noted that in my notes. I didn't ask that question, but thank you for clearing that up. That's quite a distance, but, it'll be part of the record, and, change the staff report to reflect that. And, with that, Mr. Bowen? Okay. The first person, there are no testifiers in the neutral position. In the opposition, we have Arnold Tierney. Is that right?
I have to say, not testifying, was not sworn in because I got representative for our subdivision assignment.
Thank you. Next on the list is Jenny Campos. Would you like to testify?
My name is Jenny Campos. My address is 2924 Bianco Street, Caldwell. I have been sworn in.
Thank you very much.
The largest concern that I have as a member of the Marble Valley subdivision, which is directly across the road from the proposed development, is that I take my kids to Van Buren Elementary, and right now there is nothing in place, and I know that it's been acknowledged that there's a lot of potential development for the city planning. There are improvements to be made. But right now, there's a narrow street with a busy school, and the two developments closest to the proposed development right now, the population total is less than the count of the residences proposed in the new development. And so to add that number of individuals, that number of new residences to that area really puts a strain on what is existing currently. We don't have any traffic lights. We don't have sidewalks that extend the road where there's school activity, there's pedestrian activity constantly. So to add that without first addressing those other issues could create potential safety hazards. We have heard from representatives from the school board that the population of the school is already strained or potentially strained, and to add new residences that are geared towards younger families who are going to add more population to that school system, that it's a concern of mine as a parent to school-age children who are, especially right now in the current circumstances, not receiving the education that they should be receiving, just based on what is available currently. And that's nothing to say against the school system. I know right now this year is just, we're trying to maintain a standard that is difficult. The other issue, I guess, that we have, or one of the biggest issues, is that all of the surrounding developments are single-family residences. And while we do need new developments for individuals, we're short on houses. We are. It adds just, there's an element that is not already there that is being added by the multifamily unit that doesn't fit the area as it sits currently. So the concern is just that it kind of just takes what is in existence and we need to decide, put in something new that is not in keeping with the current standards. And that concludes what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next we have, Andrea Espy.
Andrea Espy, I'm at 612 Danby Avenue, Caldwell Court, and I've been sworn in.
Thank you.
So my house actually, butts right up to this, agricultural land at this point. And, when I moved in, and this entire community that is built right here, I literally, this roundabout will come into my, side yard. You know, I mean, I'm right there. So I knew that eventually, and everyone in our neighborhood knew eventually that this piece of land would be developed. We're not, against development at all. What we're against is, the multifamily part of this. We feel like we're finally at the point in our neighborhood, in Montecito, in Marble Valley, that, we're gaining equity, our crime is down, and to put a multifamily R1 in there when it's, you know, been deemed, rural residential for a very long time, and all of those other subdivisions have to meet that standard, it's just not cohesive with what's there. And, I feel like the traffic of 176 units, we have 36 in our neighborhood, and we have one entrance, one exit right now. So the new development will go either out into Lincoln, which Lincoln right now doesn't have really any reason other than trying to get to Middleton, or go up Canyon Hill to circle back onto Marble Front. All of those residents, regardless of what leave, they're not gonna go out to Lincoln except to go to that school or over to Middleton. They're gonna come out onto Marble Front, and they're gonna come through our neighborhood because of the way that roundabout is built. 176 units means probably 500 or 600 vehicles, because we have 4 cars or 5 cars at our house. You know, I mean, and so, yes, the single family that they're putting in there are gonna be lovely, I'm sure. But I have the question of the 12-unit row townhouses. Once that is sold, once that 12-unit is sold, how are we going to keep any standards for the rest of those single residents that live in there and into our community? We've had enough problems. We have an officer from the police department that makes rounds at 3 a.m. because we have people pretty constantly, not from our neighborhood that we can tell, but coming into the neighborhood and breaking into our cars, going through them, rummaging through them. We just feel like we worked really hard in the entire area to build up and maintain the standard of a family community now with great equity, and we're afraid, I mean, and that's probably what you got in that the staff got in all of the letters from the residents around there was, how do we keep a standard of low crime, you know, single family, community-minded things if this is what if we put those multifamily apartment, or townhouses in there. Once they're sold, how do we keep that standard? If then that owner is the one that individually rents those out. So, is there anything in any CCNRs for the community that will say they're not going to accept state rental vouchers for people that are moving in there? They're renting $1,200, but if they have a voucher, then they can move in there. And I know that comes across as naughty, or, you know, I mean, it does, and I'm not meaning to sound that way, but when you work really hard, I'm the HOA president, we work really hard with the other communities to make sure that if we have somebody that's causing a problem or having an issue, we nip it in the butt and we get on it, and we're all about, you know, doing that. So I think that that's the fear with that multifamily portion of it. Not the single family development, not even the townhouses. We need houses that people can afford in this community, we get that. But you're probably getting that we are very worried for the surrounding area because of that. Because of sometimes the element that comes into those multifamily things. Caldwell's becoming such an amazing little hub on this side of the valley. I would hate for that community to start to be known for less than even what the developer wanted because of those multifamily, allowances. So, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on the sign up. I missed some persons, who had signed up in favor. Let me, go back to that column, and I'm sorry to look at the additional sheets here. I suppose this is the way to do it, but the Tanner Layton, would you care to testify?
Would it be all right, Mr. Hearing Examiner, if I go last, since I am the applicant, sir?
Oh, I see. Absolutely.
Or I can go right now, and that would be fine.
Well, the process,
Yes,
the
sir.
person testifying in favor, should go first.
Yes, sir.
The ground was laid down. Okay. Sorry I missed you on the first time around, but go ahead, please.
No worries. Thank you, Hearing Examiner. Tanner Layton, 811 East McKinley, Idaho, Boise, Idaho, 83712, and I have been sworn in, sir. I don't have much. I think Penelope did an unbelievable job. I would just like to reiterate as the applicant that we will work with the city on their conditions and yours as well. And at this time, I don't have as much to add. I will stand for questions.
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Layton.
Thank you.
I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you, sir.
And then next, is on the in favor is Kelsey Layton. Would you care to testify?
No, I'm good, thank you though.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that, folks. I got out of order. Should have looked at all of them. So, next, is Edward, Jordan. Would you like to testify, please? No, I would not. Okay. And, next is, Mr. Brian Allen. Would you like to testify, please?
My name is Brian Allen, 211 North Alaska, in Caldwell, and I've been sworn in.
Thank you.
I presently, don't want this development to be done right now, okay? I have no objection against, the development itself. However, I think it's too soon for this development. With the RV park, the RV resort, and the present, subdivision being built down on Marble Front. I think there's too much development going on at one time. Since I live up on Alaska, it's been harder and harder to get out on Marble Front. I do a daily walk with my neighbor who's 86 years old, walking with a cane. We walk up and down Indiana, and for months and months, when they were building Mosaic, the concrete trucks would go back and forth. There's not enough room on that road. There's no sidewalks. I think it's just too soon for this development. There's got to be a way where the developments need to be completed a little bit more, and let the infrastructure be done, let the dust settle, let all the road conditions taken care of, because all these developers can make all their surveys if they want to, but they never turn out what the survey says. And lastly, I don't think Van Buren's gonna be able to take the load. Since I walk, the gentleman that I walk with every morning is the father-in-law of Mrs. Lanigan. And what I hear is Van Buren is pretty well full now. I don't know what Mosaic will be able to take. They're advertising via mail right now. for next year's 1 through 5. So I don't think the schools will be able to handle the new development. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And next, is it Ms. Pratt? Help me out here.
Yeah, right here.
Would you like to testify, please?
I was not sworn in, but if I can be, I've got plenty to say.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I haven't been sworn in, but I have something to say if it can be heard.
We'd be glad to swear you in.
Oh.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you. Your testimony, please.
Hi, I'm Carolee Pratt. I live at 2803 Lacrana. I have recently been sworn in, thank you. I'm new to Caldwell. I'm one of those damn Californians and moved to the area. I have an 80-year-old father who needs a little help and assistance through his sunset years, and I've just been in the Marble Heights only about 5 months now. I haven't even met some of my neighbors. They have been super warm, welcoming. I never for once thought that the empty lots would be empty forever. As we see, there is a housing crisis, and people are being bought 3 times what they're asking. And just as somebody who doesn't follow that is well aware of it. With that said, coming from California, I do know what, housing and multifamily housing can bring to a community. And I am excited that I don't live that life anymore, and adopting I'm from Iowa, from Idaho beliefs and freedoms, and would love to see that the multifamily piece of this really be evaluated, that the people that are coming in to support the economy or support the city, that they're being supported in return for coming. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next, we have Kai Highland. Would you like to testify, please?
No, thank you.
Thank you. And Nicole Highland, would you like to testify?
No, thank you.
Thank you. And last on the list is Shannon Lamb. Would you like to testify, please?
No, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave. No, thank you. Okay. And now, the last for real is Mr. Stephen Wasser. Would you like to testify, please?
No, thank you.
All right. I'd like to thank you all for your perseverance and for your testifying about this proposal. I understand the import to your neighborhood and your feelings that this is going to have a deleterious impact. I certainly hope that isn't so, but what we're trying to achieve here is the best possible outcome for growth that is inevitable. And when the properties are included in the area of impact for the city of Caldwell, they are subject to annexation and development according to the comprehensive plan. So this is the process that we have to try to get the best outcome for that. Ms. Drew, you had a question?
Do you need to offer the applicant rebuttal time?
Oh, thank you very much. I'd just like, to add that note, and you all acknowledge, the inevitability of growth, and this provides an opportunity to get a better take on that growth, and I hope that's what we're here to do, and I hope that's what the city council would do when they have the chance to review this proposal. And with that, the applicant, rebuttal, if you like, Penelope.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Again, for the record, Penelope Constantine, Post Office Box 405, Boise, Idaho 83701, representing Triple Dot Development. First of all, I think the thing that's hard to get your hands around, if you're not in the industry that I'm in, is that road improvement occurs with development, because municipalities don't generally have the financial resources available to go in and put infrastructure in first. So what happens is, with development comes more sidewalks, wider streets, traffic signals, all the things that improve the network that surrounds the neighborhood. And that's just the reality, that's how it happens. In terms of adding vehicle trips, actually ITE manual, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, predicts that townhomes generate 0.22 to 0.24 vehicle trips per unit in the PM peak hour. So our multifamily row townhouses will generate approximately 18 vehicle trips in the PM peak hour. So, and that's information that I just have access to because I do a lot of impact fee work. But I think that the assumption that there's going to be a transportation flash mob occurring as a result of the development is perhaps not quite accurate. I'm a multifamily dweller. I live in a row townhouse, and I'm not a criminal, and no one that lives around me is a criminal. And I think it's unfair to assume that anyone that lives in a multifamily development of any kind is automatically a negative influence in the neighborhood. I just think that's really unfair to make those kinds of assumptions. So, with regard to the residents that will be in the multifamily portion of the development, again, the developers are the owners, they will remain the owners, and they are planning on doing background checks for residents, which is very common nowadays, as well as verifying that people have the economic resources available to be good residents of a multifamily project. We've gotten different information with regard to the capacity of the school, in that it is under capacity. So between now and the time we get to city council, we'll do everything we can to get some more verifiable information about what is actually happening at Van Buren with regard to school capacity. Charter schools are populated by a lottery system with children and siblings, children of teachers and siblings of existing students are automatically given preferential status. The rest of it is just done by a lottery system. So the students can come from anywhere in the school district. Certainly some of them will probably come from the El Monterey development, but it's hard to predict what kind of load would occur. But there are 2 schools here, so I think that provides an opportunity to distribute the student body that might be coming with the development over more than 1 school. So again, there were 7 car accidents between Georgia and Bridgeport in the last 12 years. Many of them were not on Marble Front, but in the entry to one of the subdivisions or on the shoulder. There were only 2 on the hill where the canal is. There were actually more accidents between Marble Front and Bridgeport goes down and then hooks to the east. There were 13 car accidents in that subdivision in the same time period. So, again, I think assuming that the subdivision is going to be populated by bad drivers might be a little unfair as well. I think it's a good project, and there is a housing need all these jobs that are coming in. We've got young people who have been suffering through COVID and are ready to go out and get jobs and go to work and have a life. And this kind of a project that has a multiple, variety of housing types makes it possible for more people to live close to jobs, which reduces trip length, it reduces impact on roadways. There are all kinds of benefits that come from having housing close to employment centers, and that's what's happening in this area. For example, Jane Sugg's development is gonna have manufacturing jobs. Those are well-paying jobs that, the city of Caldwell will benefit from. So I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but, I hope that, provides a counterpoint for the neighborhood comments. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for your testimony, Nancy. Robert, I forgot to ask, do we have any online inquiries, or are we taking online inquiries for testimony?
No.
Which, we don't have any, or we're not taking?
No one signed up for any online inquiries. We do not have a Zoom meeting active or anything, so everybody that was testifying should be in this room.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll conclude the, testimony for this and move to, recommendations. Just as a preamble, I saw an article on, Channel 7 the other night about housing values, in Fraser Valley, and as we all know, they're going through the roof. And, one of the primary concerns, in my history, as a planner has been, affordable housing. And, the item before us, the proposal before us, does provide a somewhat affordable housing, but, I was even taken aback with the applicant's testimony about the bottom end of that being around $250,000, which is, roughly 6 times more than I paid for my first house, which dates me in one sense. But anyway, it seems like the intent of the applicant is for home ownership, and that puts, the potential or future residents, as the case may be, on an equal footing, with the surrounding neighborhoods. The other issue, Rob, could you put up the landscape plan, please? Thank you. The landscape plan on your right-hand side of the screen, shows a single-family lot pattern that actually exceeds the lot size, in most cases, of the lots to the west and to the south, equal to, and it's very conscientious effort. I've seen, hundreds of planned unit developments, that, were not as, let's say, forthright in trying to, integrate themselves into the surrounding, parcels in this manner that, so that the front that the neighborhood will see is lot sizes equal to or greater than the ones that they're in. And they're not that's any bearing as far as, the quality of life or the other kind of concerns that people have had here. But, this is a very conscientious and direct effort to, somewhat buffer the proposed use from, the surrounding uses by, matching or exceeding, the adjoining lot sizes. And, quite frankly, it's commendable that they've done, as I said, I've seen a lot of these kinds of proposals that go in the other direction. They just try to, pack them in at every occasion. And quite frankly, and without getting to the war story, I was a professional planner for 34 years, and this is one of the better designs that I have seen for this type of development, in those 34 years, in the aspect of, trying to buffer this use from the surrounding use and make it compatible with the surrounding uses. And, we do have a paramount responsibility as a community, as a county, a state, a nation, to provide, housing for everybody, in the community. And, I think this is a very good design, a very good effort to have a good mix here. And, the type of development we're looking at does have nice amenities. Have to say it's the first amphitheater that I've ever seen in any development proposal. And, in residential development, that is, and considerable amount of open space. So, just, again, the war stories, I don't want to bore everybody with that, but this is, one of the better designs that I've seen in 34 years of planning practice. And I had a job similar to Mrs. Ruth's here, as far as being a planner, for 4 jurisdictions. So I'm quite impressed with the design, the various aspects of it, the roundabout, the amount of open space, the connectivity, and all these things that are important to, make a residential, development function and be integrated into the community. And I like to thank the, developers and the designers for coming up with this, kind of plan. It really is exceptional. Moving on, I wanted to establish very clearly that with our, discourse with the staff about this meeting the qualifications for planned unit development. Our planned unit development is sparse. It has not kept up with, the current housing trends. And, so I wanted to make it very clear, to the people of interest in this and to the city council that this does indeed meet the criteria, for a planned unit development, and therefore is, eligible for the kind of density increase that it would, appreciate through this kind of design. I did a tiny bit of, mathematics here. And these are estimates. You have to understand the proposal is for 122 units, and I would like to make note of that the preamble to this that talked about 118 units is actually 122. But if this were developed in the same what I call a standard subdivision, there would be something around 94 units on the same piece of property, and it'd be covered from stem to stern with roads and housing with very little open space and the kind of amenities that we're looking here. And so, were it to be developed as a standard sub in the R1, you come up shy of 28 units from what the proposal is. So it's really not an immensely greater density. Yes, it is, but the increment, is roughly 28 units that it would appreciate through the compliance with the planned unit development standards, and those standards are made to encourage a better development. One of the letters I would like to cite this from Ken Yellen, one of your neighbors at the Zoom, talks about the parking issue, and I think that's a valid concern. Penelope, the applicant, said that they are meeting the standards and would be able to possibly add more parking, and I appreciate the comments, these insightful comments in the letters that we received about the concerns. And the thing about this is it provided a positive suggestion, and so we'll incorporate that into the motion to increase the parking in the multifamily area to provide for visitors and such. I don't have a number, but, I think that, with this type of development, again, what I stated earlier is we're trying to get the best possible solution, for this type of, development. And I think, adequate parking or more than adequate parking is, a benefit here. Also, both the staff and applicant talked about, additional amenities. I'm all for that. Again, we're trying to set the sites, pretty high, for the Canadian development. So, number one, it does raise the bar. And number two, it'll provide, an example for future developments to try to meet these standards. And, for that, we can thank the designers and developers here. And, without further ado, and keeping you from your family any longer, I'll move to the, recommendations. For item one, we take these in sequence, the annexation, the comp plan amendment, and then the preliminary plat and plan view development. The findings and facts for the annexation, the Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. The conclusions of law for the annexation, the Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend it to the city council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and the city ordinances. Recommendation for the annexation. Based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council that case number ANN-20-09, a request for annexation of 20.35 acres with the designation of R1 low-density residential for the purpose of the proposed plan unit development and preliminary plat for El Monterey subdivision containing 122 units consisting of 10 multifamily lots, 76 units, 19 townhomes, 27 single-family residential lots, and 8 common lots for subject properties, parcels R35117 and R35117-010, is approved with the conditions of approval listed in section 10. Section 10, starting on page 15 of the staff report, includes 10.1 through 10.3. With that, we'll take a look at the recommendation. For the PUD and preliminary plat, and the findings of fact, the PUD and preliminary plat, the Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. I'd like to add the finding that the proposed PUD and preliminary plat provides a good example of multiple use residential development. It provides all of the amenities and facilities as described and required in the PUD ordinance. The conclusions of law, PUD and preliminary plat. The Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend it to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. and the recommendation for the PUD and preliminary plat. Based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council that case number PUD-20-04, a request for a planned unit development and preliminary plat for El Monterey subdivision with 122 residential units consisting of 10 multiple family lots, 76 units, 19 townhomes, 27 single-family residential lots, and 8 common lots on 20.35 acres, parcels 35117 and 35117-010 with the designation of R1 low-density residential is approved with the conditions of approval listed in section 16 and with amendments as follows. I will add amendment 16.19. The proposal shall include additional optional amenities with potential for tot lot or a volleyball court or other amenity that could be worked out in conjunction with the staff to further enhance the amenities in this development. In addition to that, Article 16.20 recommend an increase in parking for the multiple family development to accommodate visitors and make parking on the street unnecessary and less attractive. Now, the number of additional parking will be worked out with the applicant and the staff. But I'd like to make it closer to the standard 2 parking stalls that are held for single-family development. But I'm not setting an absolute number. That has to be worked out in conjunction with the design. And with that, I conclude this hearing. Thank you all with your participation. I appreciate you coming out and testifying. Thank you very much.
This makes me sick. I could call it.